Here are some scriptures that you might use in order to get a religious exemption from vaccine mandates. Hi, my name is Ali Schwaga. This is 10 Points to Ponder, where we like to talk about all the things that get you canceled: race, politics, Jesus, and manhood. Today, I want to talk about 10 scriptures that you might use if you're in need of writing a religious exemption from COVID vaccine mandates. I just went through this as I had to help out a friend of mine who was getting a religious exemption. And so I want to give a shout out to him. He knows who he is, for kind of letting me read what he wrote in order to get this exemption and starting the conversation. I've looked all around YouTube. I don't know if people have comprehensively kind of gone through the scriptures and talked about certain things that you might want to put in a religious exemption. All these scriptures are going to be out of the New Living Translation. Point 1, it violates your conscience. Romans 14:23. But if you have doubts about whether or not you should eat something, you are sinning if you go ahead and do it, for you're not following your convictions. If you do anything that you believe is not right, you are sinning. This is the number one reason for a religious exemption. If I don't feel that this is glorifying God, I don't feel like this is a good thing, and I can't do it fully in assurance and in faith, then I should not do it. And so who is the government, who is this job to tell me to violate my conscience and therefore fall into sin? Point 2, glorifying God with your bodies. 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20, it says, "Don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price, so you must honor God with your body." If you're asking me as an individual to inject something into my body in order to keep my job, I don't know exactly all that's entailed in it, and I should be able to glorify God with my body by allowing my body to reject and absorb this new disease so that I get the protective factors that this vaccine purports to give to me. Point 3, the Bible warns against foolishness. Proverbs 22, verse 3, it says, "A prudent person foresees danger and takes precaution. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences." Almost lost in all the discussion of COVID vaccine mandates is that it's an experimental procedure. So why would I, and what wisdom is it to just inject something in my body because someone says that it's safe and yet hasn't been approved by the FDA? Now, in all of this, I want to say in full disclosure, I took the COVID vaccine. I took it back in February when I was being told that this would be a way of not infecting other people just because of the field that I worked in. And I thought, you know what? I don't think that there's going to be much harm to me. I'd already actually had COVID back in November. And so I took the vaccine just knowing that it probably wasn't likely to kill me or have any further harm than when I got COVID. If it had been something like today where it's being mandated and being forced upon people, I think that it being mandated would have caused me definitely to resist the vaccine. Point 4, to combat the world's fear-mongering. 2 Timothy 1:7, it says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." A sound mind wouldn't take a vaccine for a disease in which the average age of death is 80. It's only fear that causes us to look past even the logic of this. The average age of death from COVID is 80. So the only way that people are running in droves to take this vaccine or trying to force you into this vaccine is by promoting fear. And so the fear of COVID obviously isn't working for some people. Now they're trying to instill the fear of losing your job. Point 5. I have nothing to fear because I love Jesus. Kind of the same thing. 1 John 4:18. It says, such love, that is the perfect love of God, has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. Even if we die, we have nothing to fear because Jesus has paid it all on our behalf. We know that when we're absent from this body, we'll be present with the Lord in heaven. Therefore, the Christian that's been perfected in love doesn't need to fear and fall in line with the rest of the world that's taking this because they think that it's going to prolong their lives. I know that God has already prepared a place for me. So that's 5. Point 6. God's commands supersede the edicts of men. Acts 4:19 says, but Peter and John replied, do you think God wants us to obey you rather than him? We cannot stop telling everything that we have seen and heard. The apostles themselves were warned by governmental authorities to disobey God's commands, and they stood firm. And the same thing for us right now as we're being asked to inject things into our body in order to keep our jobs. Do we obey God if your conscience is saying, hey, you shouldn't take this, there's no point in taking this, it's foolish to take this? Then should I obey God and the brain that he's given me, the mind he's given me, the very logic that he's given me? Or should I obey the edicts of men? Point 7. The mandate is a fear tactic being used to undermine faith in God. Matthew 10 verse 28 says, don't be afraid of those who want to kill your body. They cannot touch your soul. Fear God who can destroy both soul and body in hell. We are told exactly not to fear men. And all of these mandates, all of this blustering, all this yelling, all this screaming, all this making unvaccinated people feel like they're less than human and treating them as such because once vaccine passports come out, they can't go to different places like they're a second-class citizen or less than a person, is trying to promote a greater fear of men than a fear of God. And so for those who are saying that they do not want to take that vaccine, then I say to you, stand firm. Point 8. This is the beginning of deception in the last days. 2 Thessalonians 2, 9 through 12 says, this man, who's talking about the Antichrist, will come to do the works of Satan with counterfeit power and signs and miracles. He'll use every kind of evil deception to fool those on their way to destruction, because they refuse to love and accept the truth that would save them. So God will cause them to be greatly deceived. They will believe these lies. Then they will be condemned for enjoying evil rather than believing the truth. We can already see what's going on with this COVID-19 pandemic. All of these counterfeit powers are rising up. Masks do not work. This vaccine right now has not been working. And the only thing that we need to be focused on is treatment and making sure that when you do get it, you don't die from it. Point 9. This is indicative of the last days, and we don't want to be like those people who are listed in the last days who loved money more than God. 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 2, it says, "You should know this, Timothy, in the last days there will be very difficult times, for people will love only themselves and their money. They'll be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, consider nothing sacred." By not taking the vaccine, especially if you're under a mandate, is basically saying, I love God more than this job. And if God is convicting me and I'm thoroughly convinced in my mind that I do not need to take this and this is unwise, then I am willing to follow God's commands. In the last days, people will continue to fall off all these slippery slopes. And that's what I see vaccine mandates as. A slippery slope to get you to prize money and the things of earth, your job, far more than God, who might be speaking to you in your conscience and saying, don't take this vaccine. Point 10, the last one, and this is one that should be apparent to most Christians. This is the beginning of requirements. This vaccination, this mandate, is the precursor, I believe, to the mark of the beast. Now, we don't believe necessarily, and there are different thoughts on this, that the mark of the beast is something physical. I don't think it's physical. I think that it's something that shows your allegiance to this world power, that shows that you love this idol or this antichrist more than God. But it says in Revelations 13, 16 through 17, this is speaking of, again, the Antichrist and the false prophet. It says, he required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or the forehead, and no one could buy or sell anything without that mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. Like I said, the mark is most likely a spiritual rather than a physical thing. It will be an indication of allegiance and worship of Satan. The mandatory nature of vaccines can be seen as a sort of training wheel to get people to capitulate, to if someone holds up the threat of your job, then you'll just go ahead and bow down before that idol. And we need to stand against this. We need to continue to uphold American values of individualism and freedom. The very reason that we have this nation, that pilgrims came to this nation, was for religious freedom, that they could read the scriptures and practice in the way that they felt God was leading them to do. And if we lose that, we lose America. And so for those who are resisting, who don't want to be part of this vaccination mandate, this forced vaccination in order to keep your job, I've listed 10 scriptures that you might be able to use in trying to explain why it is that you feel so strongly against it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and please, to your friends that are dealing with this, make sure that you share this video. My name is Ali Schwaga, and this has been 10 Points to Ponder.